This was the philosophy behind the establishment of the National Institute of Legislative Studies.
So there's no reason why we cannot double the performance of power.
And the usual casualty, when the military intervenes is the parliament. They are sacked. So when they resume again, they'll start all over again.
It's an institution that experiences very high attrition rate of membership. Judges, some start from magistrate. Before they make it to the High Court, you will find out that down the line, they have attended so many courses.
To move fast while others are taking it easy and so on. Because when there is a fire next time, to paraphrase the great African-American writer, James Baldwin, it may be too late for us as a country. At that point, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you are.
Democracy is striving in Africa, much like in other places in the world. Today, democracy has become the only accepted currency in governance. With this trend, parliaments in Africa are becoming first arms of governments due to the enormous challenges facing African countries.
In concluding this short vote of thanks, Mr. President,
much is expected of the beleaguered legislatures in taming reckless presidents, hastening developments, and reducing poverty. There is no doubt that the National Assembly is no more a rubber-stamp parliament with legislators taking budgetary oversight more seriously than before. But in spite of the progress made in the past 10 years, the legislature has remained the most traumatized part of government throughout the history of post-colonial Africa. Here in Nigeria, high turnover of legislators, inadequate infrastructure, low capacity and ineffectual oversight is greatly hampering legislative work.
The truth about the legislature as compared to the judiciary is that it's an institution that experiences very high attrition rate of membership. Judges, some start from magistrate. Before they make it to the High Court, you will find out that down the line, they have attended so many courses. We don't have that here. That is what has caused stability in the army. That has caused stability in the judiciary, unfortunately. Even in the civil service. That has caused that stability. But it's missing here. You know why? Somebody who is just living in his farm. Once he's popular with the people, they'll say, go and be senator. You come and start learning the ropes you would have learned as a councillor.
Training and capacity building of legislators has been identified as a major procedure of improving the legislature in Nigeria. Since 1999, several donor agencies have contributed to the training of legislators and support staff in various capacities. In addition, at the beginning of each new session, federal legislators undergo orientation workshops in all the geopolitical zones of the country.
Azikwe, Awolowo, Sardauna, Tafawa Balewa, if they should come back, if they should resurrect now, they will come actually to meet a totally different Nigeria, beyond their own comprehension.
And discussion.
Experts and university professors sensitize new and returning legislators on the imperatives of legislation in Nigeria. Important topics like the history of constitution making, the nature of federalism, the role of legislators in economic, political and social development, and their role in foreign policy and international agreements are introduced and discussed in the 6 workshop venues across the nation. After 2 successive sessions, however, the National Assembly, faced with the unmitigated high turnover, realized that the capacity building and knowledge-based support for the legislature is a Herculean task. In that regard, in 2004, a project called the Policy Analysis and Research Project was set up in collaboration with the African Capacity Building Foundation. The project, formally launched in 2005, was designed to help the National Assembly to analyze national policies, draft bills, and organize trainings. PARP underwent 2 successful phases that concentrated on training legislators, publishing documents, and collaborating with institutions.
In terms of short-term courses, most of our short-term courses are foreign. They are done abroad. We implemented 32 in Part 1. Last year we were able to implement 8. For conferences, mostly international conferences, in PAP 1 we implemented 35. The first year so far we implemented about 5. Exchange of experience, that's networking with other parliaments, and in some cases we're able to get attachment positions for National Assembly staff in some foreign parliaments. In PAP 1 we've been able to do 15, and so far PAP 2, the first year of PAP 2, we've been able to do 8.
Although PAP was a success, the National Assembly felt there was a need to create a unique legislative institution to train not only federal legislators but those in states, local councils and the ECOWAS region as a whole. On 2nd March 2011, an act to establish the National Institute for Legislative Studies (NILS) was passed by both the Senate and the House of Reps. The act empowers the institute to train Nigerian legislators and those across the West African region. The institute is mandated to, among others, train legislators and their support staff, evaluate national policies, support bills drafting, establish useful database of issues and policies, develop parliamentary communication, establish collaboration with other institutions and parliaments.
PAB laying the foundation. PAB was established as an ad hoc project. First phase lasted only 4 years. Second phase, 4 years. But by the time the second phase began, the National Assembly leadership began to deeply appreciate the importance of having a sustainable institute, not just a project that could last for 4 years and maybe die there. And that was the reason why they decided to transform, as it were, the Policy Analysis Research Project into an institute with an enabling act and with an enlarged scope.
We want to ensure that legislators, they display from point of knowledge and exposure. So it was necessary for us at that point to get them trained in different institutions and to exchange visits with the older parliaments so that they can share information. So we use the instrumentality of the Policy and Research Project to achieve this over a period of time. And it got to a point where we decided to set up an institute that will better perform this function. And that's where the idea of National Institute of Legislative Studies came about. We have successfully enacted the Act, and today it is a reality that we have the National Institute of Legislative Studies that is playing a major role not only in the National Assembly but also in the state assemblies. And we're extending our vision and our operation to the ECOWAS sub-region. And hopefully the people of Africa will benefit from the enterprise.
The need has always been there, but organized as an institute, it simply means it's more serious. New staff have been hired, a lot of PhDs, a lot of highly educated people. So everyone knows that really Nigeria has finally arrived into the knowledge, into the age of knowledge, the knowledge policy interplay. This is really an era of knowledge at one level as well as globalization. And for lawmakers, no matter what it is that we're discussing, there's a global dimension and there is a policy impact dimension. And they need a group of technocrats as well as thinkers and broad-based intellectuals reflecting on the implications of what they're doing. So it's always welcome, and as you can see, it's been highly appreciated.
Dr. Ladi Hamalai, who had earlier headed the successful phases of PARP, was appointed the first Director General of the new institution. The institute is the first of its kind in West Africa and among the few in the world. Creating such an institution requires the recruitment of brilliant researchers and support staff. 80 staff members were recruited for the takeoff of the institution. Almost all members have postgraduate experiences. In a managerial interactive session to welcome new staff, the DG and the chairman of the special committee left the staff in no doubt regarding the task ahead.
Now we have probably about 30 experts, professional staff. So there's no reason why we cannot double the performance of PAP in 2 years. I'll hold you responsible to that in 2 years. God's willing, I'm going to ask you whether you've been able to do so or not. If you go to any training facility, go to Oxford University, go to any other training facility, you wouldn't find better than this. If not for the determination of the Joint Steering Committee of PAP, the Governing Council of PAP, this act would not have been achieved. But they were determined against all odds, and I mean against all odds. There are so many petitions, so many bickerings, so many obstacles, but they were determined. That's why we are here today. Fortunately for us, the chairman of the Governing Council of PAP is still the chairman of the Governing Council of Institute. We are very lucky.
The only economies that will survive into the mid-21st century are knowledge-based economies. And very clearly, NILS as an institute that will become increasingly important as a testing ground and as a center not only of excellence but of opportunity for the best minds in this country to find a national forum where they can come and debate general principles as well as specific policy issues is there and important to us. I'll just read one of my dozen books is called Instrumental Pan-Africanism.
Soon after, the new staff embarked on an orientation tour of the National Assembly to have interactive sessions with stakeholders. At the National Assembly, new staff members were taking rounds the various departments to see and ask questions about the kind of support services they offer. Support services are paramount in the work of any parliament, without which lawmaking and oversight will be difficult.
You can see the center has just been newly refurbished.
Just read the voice and give us, the calculation, not just having someone say, okay, because this is louder, then they have it.
Subsequently, an interactive session with senior members of management was also organized. In a speech, the clerk of the National Assembly explained the management structure of the National Parliament.
The leadership of the National Assembly has two layers, namely the political and the bureaucratic leadership. The President of the Senate and the Deputy are the presiding officers of the Senate, while other party leaders constitute the principal officers. The Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives and the Deputy are the presiding officers of the House of Representatives, while the political party leaders constitute the principal officers. The clerk of the National Assembly, the Deputy Clerk of the National Assembly, the Clerk of the Senate, the Clerk of the House of Representatives, and their deputies, directly of the department comprise the National Assembly management. Capacity building is central in the agenda of both the bureaucratic and political leadership. Towards this end, officers and members are benefited from local and international training and retraining, parliamentary study visits, and internship programs. Let me quickly place on record that both the management and political leadership of the National Assembly played key roles in the establishment of the reform path and the National Institute for Executive Studies.
For a legislative institution that aims at becoming first class, sensitization and interaction with potential stakeholders is paramount. The carefully selected members of the Institute Governing Council embarked on a series of meetings with members of the National Assembly. It is time to trace the history of the institution and how crucial it is to the development of legislation in Nigeria.
The history of NILS is something that most people here are very familiar with. The evolution from PAP, people are much more familiar with. The grid clearly has dovetailed into the sort of practices that other countries and other developing democracies are embracing at this point. India has its own institute, developed in such a way that it's part of the legislature document. Malaysia has a very well-developed one. Singapore, but even far more important than advanced democracies in the United States, for instance, the Library of Congress, the Congressional Budget Office are part and parcel of this sort of institute.
The NILS Act 2011 bestows on NILS the responsibility of conducting quality academic and professional research, policy analysis, consultancy services, training, and advocacy on democratic governance and legislative practice and procedures. The NILS 2011 Act empowers the Institute to act as a center of excellence for research and publication on democratic governance and legislative practice and procedures, act as a center for continuing education on democracy and legislation, conduct periodic and special courses for national and state legislators, staff, committee clerks and political aides on legislative practice and procedure, democracy and good governance.
I'll make haste to add that this institute is entirely your own institute. It is one of the organs of the National Assembly, just as we have the National Assembly Service Commission and lately the National Public Complaint Commission. So the National Institute of Legislative Studies is your creation. It's a baby. It belongs to you entirely. It's one of those novel ideas of the great men and women that today are members of the National Assembly of Nigeria. But as a giant of Africa, we must also be in the position to build the capacity of the rest of Africa. And that's what the rest of Africa expects from Nigeria. This was the philosophy behind the establishment of the National Institute of Legislative Studies. And I'm happy to announce that it has come to stay. And I'm sure you're aware of the great problems we have, especially in the Houses of Assembly, in terms of their capacity. No doubt at national level, a lot has been achieved in this direction, but you can never say the same of state assemblies. So it is important that we integrate them in this initiative so that together we can all march forward, building a great legislative body for Nigeria. And all the training are conducted by...
Most of the questions from the legislators centered on duration of courses, curbing external sabotage, and commitment of legislators to capacity building.
Looking through the courses, take the parliamentary reporting for instance, 1 week. Is that sacrosanct? I don't know what you want to learn within the week.
And my question will then be, how is this institute equipped to be able to assist members so that we are very effective in delivering on our duties in a way that can lessen the kind of turnovers that we'll be having, and so that we're better guaranteed that the training we receive can become useful in order for able to sustain the institution, the institution, the legislation.
We should try as much as possible to make sure that those who are interested, maybe you can tell people to apply for such courses, and even sign an indemnity so that you will prevent this kind of disgrace of our own assembly. Thank you very much.
Let us also be so committed to the fact that there are other external factors that we must defeat so that this economic deficit will eventually translate into the deficit of the world. Thank you very much.
I had a meeting at the International Law Institute. One of the questions, International Law Institute, Washington, one of the questions they asked me, Ladi, we are willing to come and do the strategic legislative management and planning course in Abuja, but can you guarantee that the members will attend? I said, I will get back home and consult and let you know. Because previous experiences show that you invite a whole committee or 2 or 3 committees, you find that less than half of the members expected to be at the training program actually attend the training program. I believe that the 7th National Assembly is a special National Assembly. The 7th House is a special
And I believe that we would not have such programs. If we look at the work plan, we have a series of about 8 or so training programs for all legislators. And wherever you see there's fee attached, for legislators is free. But for the time being, for outsiders who want to attend our open courses, we charge them. But for members of the National Assembly and staff, as my chairman said, that will be free. So don't worry about any fees. We take care of you. All we want you to do is to please attend.
There is that background resolution to improve. But what I find as the bane of attendance to capacity building programs is in the fact that there are competing demands on the time of legislators. The panacea for that is early information and continuous reminder. These are the only things that will push capacity building courses to the front burner of the diaries of legislators. But again, it is essential to understand that we go for what we want. So it is for the NILs to come up with what I call either customized or tailor-made courses that will minister to the needs of the legislators. Some people talk as if they're in the lecture room. There are some people here who are more than 70 years. There are some who are 63. Those who have left the university almost 30, 40 years ago.
The ECOWAS Parliament is potentially a major stakeholder of the institution. Made up of 15 member states, the ECOWAS has been struggling to achieve a free movement of people and goods across the region. Recently, the organization underwent a conceptual transformation of ECOWAS of states to ECOWAS of people. This conceptual change is intended to overcome the obstacles of differing government policies that block the implementation of existing protocols.
This is a great chance with ECOWAS, which is Nigeria champion, to show what can happen when we begin to create economies of scale. Rather than a tiny country like Togo of 1 million to 2 million people or however, well, a very small country, simply managing all by itself. It's entirely possible that its markets could be open to others, and its business people can also have access to the larger markets of, say, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria, and so on. It's better for everybody. That is what the Europeans eventually discovered. And that's why tiny Belgium, for instance, can stand right next to mighty France, and mighty France can go to tiny Principality of Luxembourg, for instance, to do its business. The name of the game today is globalization. The name of the game is economy of scale. And very clearly, Nigeria, as a leader in Africa, has to demonstrate more than just well beyond the rhetoric. And there is a test case right there for it to show what can be done, and that is ECOWAS. And since NILS, at the legislative end, is the instrument in more ways than one for bringing people together to brainstorm and to think of best practices and so on, NILS has its work cut out for it. I'm particularly very proud of that particular segment of the NILS agenda. I know people worry that this is coming on too soon after NILS is just getting started, but NILS is part of PAR.
On May 22, 2012, the Institute members arrived to sensitize ECOWAS members on the potential role of the Institute in the region.
You may recall that sometime last year, some questionnaires were distributed to identify the capacity development gap in ECOWAS Parliament as well as parliaments, national parliaments of the ECOWAS countries.
During the interactive session, most of the questions asked by members had centered on rudimentary lawmaking, especially bills drafting, gender issues, party interference, and reluctance of their executive to pass acts.
Is we are over 50% across the sub-region. I'll give you a typical challenge in the Parliament of Ghana. I am from Ghana. We've had the domestic violence bill turned into an act. The female parliamentarians did not have the capacity. we are, as of this stage, deliberating on the interstate succession bill. These kinds of bills that are by design gender biased, if we do not have programs that are tailored for women in the NILs, our capacities will be still lacking after we've learned the drafting, after we've been through. So I'd like to propose, if possibly, humbly, to see if we can tailor programs that are gender-based to help women, political strategies and leadership strategies that will encourage more women to fight and get into parliament to enhance democracy. If that happens, then I will humbly ask our Speaker that this third legislature, the female parliamentarians, should be the first ones to come to the nails to get our capacity building on how to stay in parliament to promote democracy.
Most of the comments by ECOWAS members center on basic lawmaking, gender issues, and problems with parties and executives. Do you foresee any uniformity in planning training needs then?
Yes, there are differences, and if you were at the conference we had at the ECOWAS Parliament on this issue, and that was stressed. No, but the differences are that each country is different. Senegal and Cote d'Ivoire may be actually French-speaking, but they are different countries. Just like the practice even in Ghana, it's not exactly the practice in Nigeria, and so on. So there will be, and it's part of the challenge for us to basically devise programs that are suited to each country and each group of countries, and then maybe deal with those things that we need to deal with in terms of separation of powers, for instance, the role of the constitution, for instance, the role of the court, for instance, the place of public opinion. These things are there in practically every democracy. The question is exactly how they're shaped in each country. But the point is that when we come together to discuss what goes on, say, in Benin Republic, we focus on Benin Republic. It doesn't really matter. When we go on to Gambia, we focus on Gambians. Gambia, you can't confuse Gambia, even this Anglophone, with Ghana. And Ghana is not Nigeria. So by the same token, Mali is not the same as Cameroon, as let us say Burkina Faso.
But as the chairman of the council and the institute, how has the institute appreciated the imperative of multilingualism in the situation?
Yes, now that we are trying to build a permanent site, we intend to ensure that the design, captures this possible problem. So we hope that the new site, when developed, will have an opportunity for translation, of training and seminars, symposium, and conferences. So we're going to ensure that we have language translators who will be on hand to help, with multilingual conferences, seminars. So no doubt we're going to ensure that every language group will be served, in accordance with their needs. So just like my experience in ECOWAS Parliament, where we have 3 major languages: the Portuguese-speaking people, the French-speaking people, and then English-speaking people. We've tried as much as possible to serve, the language needs, of these groups, while we're in session.
And what we are trying to do now with Africa Capacity Building Foundation is to set up a mini project just for the West African parliaments and the ECOWAS parliament. The fund would be able to hire staff, will support the hiring of staff, bilingual staff, sponsor the legislators to participate in the training programs, because the National Assembly, the Nigerian government will not be able to do all these things. And if you run a program, invite them, if you don't have funds, many of them may not be as buoyant as us here in this country.
The state assemblies and local councils, another target for NILs, are more traumatized than the National Assembly and the ECOWAS. Earlier this year, the Institute organized an interactive sensitization meeting with the speakers of the state assemblies. But like federal parliaments, they face daunting challenges of executive interferences and funding problems.
The point about the abysmal condition of the state legislatures and the local councils. So I don't know how you're going to pull them along. Is it through constitutional amendments or is it through mobilization? I don't know. What are the strategies?
Well, constitutional amendment is one part of it. You remember that in the last assembly, in the 6th assembly, one of the things, our strategies of strengthening the parliament was to make the parliament self-sufficient in terms of funding, to be independent of the executive in terms of funding, because you can't be oversighting an arm of government and you're depending on them for your own finances. So following that, we amended the constitution to give the National Assembly financial independence. And also made a similar provision for the state assemblies, which was passed at the level of National Assembly. But when it got to the state assemblies, we got 23 states supporting it, but we needed 24. So because of that, it was not passed anyway. But recently there has been a clamor by the state assemblies that they want that aspect of the constitution to be revisited. So if this time around they vote for it, well, that means that their hands will be strengthened financially. Because they say that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So as long as the executive is paying them in the state level, they continue to have problem, of oversighting them. So I think it is in the interest of the society that we have strong parliaments at different levels of the country. So the second is in terms of training, because they are underfunded, so they can't undertake any sort of training. So the exposure is also limited. So with the help of National Institute of Legislative Studies and directly from the Parliament, we tend to carry them along to ensure that they are well trained, they are well exposed, so that they can make quality legislations and be able to oversight the executive efficiently in the best interest of the society.
With that, we are attempting to say, look, abrogate provisions for the joint account in section 162 of the Constitution, so that whatever resources are meant for the local governments can be appropriated directly from here to the local governments. That way, again, just like the legislature at the state would be autonomous or independent, the legislature at the local government too would begin to have that identity and will begin to have that semblance. NILS can take up these new and fresh councillors on repeated refresher courses and induction courses. I'll give you an example. Most people who become councillors hardly understand what the functions of the local governments are. Until the purpose for a thing is known, abuse is imminent. That's why some people go in there and hardly contribute anything.
The National Institute for Legislative Studies is not relenting in achieving its goal of becoming a first-class institution comparable to anywhere in the world. In October this year, the Institute Council members previewed proposals for a permanent site in Abuja. Members watched the graphic presentation of consultants critically, suggesting amendments to a plan that will provide sufficient structures befitting to a modern institution. The institution will, among other structures, be fully equipped with a state-of-the-art administrative block, museum, convention centers, and hostels.
Yes, we've consulted widely, on the best possible concept, because this institute is different from university. So it's going to be something that is going to be unique. It's going to be compact, so that whenever any person gets into the institute, is coming for a serious short-term study, so you don't need, for instance, need their vehicle there. So in that case, so it means that the hostels we're going to provide will have linkage with the library. It's going to have linkage with the classrooms. The conference rooms will also have linkages with the restaurant, for instance, so that everything will be linked together, so that in a matter of minutes, you can walk from point A to point B, within the same complex. So that is the vision we have for the institute in terms of the design.
For an institution like NILS to perform its functions, tremendous commitment is required from legislators who are already burdened by the demands of representation, overseeing, and the role of lawmaking. As democracy is consolidating, however, apart from political skills, legislators require some basic lawmaking skills and knowledge-based debating. This will guarantee their independence and fulfill their role of representation and overseeing of the executive.
Do you hope to see career legislators coming on board? I believe you are one of them.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's beginning to take shape. As we speak now, there are parliamentarians who have been there since 1999, including the president of the Senate and the chief whip of the Senate. Both of them has been there since 1999. And those of us who came to since 2003, we've been around. I'm sure there are about 10 of us who came since 2003. So I'm also hopeful that by 2015, maybe some of these people will also come back. And by that time, we are talking about some parliamentarians who have been there for upwards of 60 years. So, but we want to see a situation where down the line, we see parliamentarians that have spent 35 years, 40 years, and 50 years in the parliament. So it is important that we have this kind of people so that when problem arises in the future, there are people that you can reference and then they'll be able to say how similar things were solved in the past. So I'm looking forward to people making career of the parliament at different levels, both at the state, and then the House of Reps, and of course the Senate.
The Constitution is very clear. I think at section 69 and at section 110 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, provisions are made for the electorate to recall members of the assemblies if their performances fall below expectation. How many people know that there are these constitutional provisions? When you listen to some people talk about their representatives, the way they talk about it, if they knew there are provisions for recall, they would have attempted to do it. But again, until they are made to know, they will not know. And while ignorance thrives, illegalities also thrive. So I believe Niels has this onerous responsibility of partnering with the civil society as well as the legislatures at all levels.
Having sensitized all major stakeholders in planning a befitting permanent site, the National Institute for Legislative Studies has no doubt embarked on a lofty journey to create a first-class institute that can form the right pedestal to the development of democracy.
It has been said that Africa has been challenged to build strong and lasting institutions. Is NIL one of such institutions?
Well, NILS, as you know, is one of its kind in Africa. It's born out of our vision for a strong parliament that will be able to play a major role in the development of our region. So we believe that it's something that will endure and will help governance at different levels. So because that West Africa, most importantly West Africa, have had checkered history of military regime, and the major casualty, when the military intervene is the parliament. They are sacked. So when they resume again, they'll start all over again. So it is important that we have an institution that will build the capacity of these parliamentarians, so that they'll be able to contribute meaningfully to the development of the sub-region and indeed the rest of Africa.
We need to move fast while others are taking it easy and so on. Because when there is a fire next time, to paraphrase the great African-American writer James Baldwin, it may be too late for us as a country. At that point, it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter who you are. So what I'm saying then is that NILS can offer a forum for global thinkers. There are Nigerian globalists all over the world, in Australia, New Zealand, America, who are yearning for a chance to speak back to their countrymen, to simply say, have we thought of this? There are important things to do. This is not an age it's not an age for contractors alone. It's also an age for thinkers. And what we're hoping quite simply is that NILS would afford an opportunity for people to come and lay their cards on the table in terms of where this country ought to be going. And likely because in that audience will be senators and future governors, and at least those who want to run for governorship and so on. Because the democracy we have is simply the best we've had in a long, long time, in a way. It's troubling, largely because it's not functioning very well. But the only way for democracy to evolve is to allow it to learn and correct itself. So part of it is that NILS is part of that process that gives people a chance to come in and simply say, let's think of a whole different future.